Hello and welcome to Just Hoops. In today's video, we're going to continue to preview the 2022-2023 season with the Minnesota Timberwolves. The T-Wolves made the playoffs for the first time since 2018. They have young, skilled, athletic guys across the board, and they're looking forward with their new additions this offseason to really make a push in the West to be one of the best teams out there. We're going to dive into what can make them successful at both ends of the floor, but first, let's talk about their big new addition, the Frenchman, Rudy Gobert. Everything with Rudy Gobert starts at the defensive end of the floor. He's won the Defensive Player of the Year multiple times. He's an elite interior defender. He's elite in pick and roll defense as a drop guy. Just the way he's able to clog up the floor, take up space, and really force offense into inefficient two-point opportunities. He's a game changer at this end of the floor and was a huge part of Utah's success for a very long time. Bringing him to Minnesota can definitely improve them at the defensive end of the floor by giving them a steady force in the middle of the lane. Somebody that could really be an anchor, somebody that can block shots, rebound, and just be a steady presence to a team that likes applying pressure, that likes going and gambling on plays consistently. So if you add Rudy Gobert to an already aggressive and pretty successful defensive unit, I think the sky's the limit, and his ability to really impact at this end of the floor can be a huge proponent for their success this upcoming season. So let's go to the offensive end and talk about ways he can be successful in Minnesota. First, in transition, Minnesota pushes the pace at a high level, and Rudy Gobert's ability to rim run could be essential to his success and ability to stay on the floor longer for the T-Wolves. I think his ability to run and be a vertical threat in transition is phenomenal. We'll talk more about him as a lob and vertical threat next, but in transition, he runs the floor hard. He moves very well for his size. He has great hands. He has the ability to finish both above the rim and with touch. So I think this addition of him being able to run the floor hard could be huge in Minnesota. Now let's look at him as a pick and roll and screening threat. He's one of the best screeners in the league, and then along with that, his ability to be a vertical threat. He's a great lob catcher and finisher. If he doesn't have the opportunity to dunk it off the lob, he can bring it down and finish still with authority or with touch. I think him as a screener with Anthony Edwards, D'Angelo Russell, and the plethora of other playmaking guys on this roster, he can be highly successful and also produce high quality looks for guys on and off of the ball. But to talk about skills a little bit more, he does a great job at making himself available, finding open space, having his hands ready and out, and finishing plays in the paint. And lastly, let's talk about his post scoring. This is one area of his game that has been ridiculed by the media greatly, but in Utah, they ran sets for him to get touches down there. He did a really good job at being physical and strong. He's shown in Eurobasket a little bit that he could really make plays down there. He could seal with the best of them. He does a good job at taking his time, being patient in post-up opportunities. He can put it on the ground for a couple bounces. He has a nice hook over his left shoulder, and I think that these opportunities will be huge for him in Minnesota at allowing Cat to space the floor and the guys around him to move, cut, and play in space. So now let's dive into the Timberwolves more and talk about their defense. First with some stats. The things that stood out to me were their 13th defensive rating, and then their ability to make plays, being 3rd in steals, 3rd in block shots, they're 2nd in defensive turnover percentage. Their defense showed that they have the bones and foundation to go out and make plays at this end of the floor, but now let's dive into the film a little bit. To start, this defense was one of the best at making plays, forcing turnovers, blocking shots, and just causing havoc for offenses. You can see in their playoff stats also they were 1st in block shots and 3rd in steals. But to dive into more details, ball pressure is key. You can see in these first few clips that their ability to get up into the ball, pressure, be active, play without fouling. They need to be better at playing without fouling, but when they didn't foul at the point of attack, they got up into it, they were physical, they were aggressive. This really forced stagnation, caused the offense to get out of whack from the jump, and it resulted in turnovers and causing easy opportunities in transition. Next level of their pressure and playmaking ability came in the gap. They were really active in that first level of their defense to get a gap activity, stunt at the ball, be hands active in the passing lanes. Just do all those little things that can easily result in offensive dysfunction and malfunction. But this last part I want to talk about in terms of how they turned teams over was their ability to rotate. They were very early in their rotations. They were highly active. And we'll talk more about this later when we get into their base defense and shell. But that ability to rotate, have their heads on a swivel, and communicate was huge in their success. But at the end of the day, it came down to effort. Regardless of what was going on, they did a great job at just giving high effort and intensity night in and night out. Yes, they weren't the best overall defense in the league, but their effort and energy was there, and it was a big reason why they were able to force turnovers. And in these last few, we're going to talk about their ability to block shots. They had athletes across the board with great size and length. D'Angelo Russell being 6'4", same with Anthony Edwards, but Cat being a 7-footer. They still kept Jaden McDaniels, who's arguably a 7-footer. They got guys across the board, and they also added a Rudy Gobert to the lineup. They did a really good job at concentrating in the paint and making the paint a priority in their base defense that we'll dive into later. But their overall energy and commitment to protecting the paint, making plays on the ball, was huge in their success this past season. Now we can dive into more of their foundation, skill, and bones to their defense. Everything starts with ball pressure, but when we look off the ball, the paint is priority. They load the paint and make real effort to make things tough out there and force teams outside. Here's a great example of that. Kevin Porter Jr. has the ball, the gap is loaded at the nail, and everybody else is surrounding the box. Here's another great example of Pascal Siakam having the ball. The nail's loaded, the strong side blocks loaded. You can see the low man's already creeping over to get to the rim. There's just an assertive effort at preventing easy paint points by this defense, which made them highly successful. And we got one more clip here of the defense just being there, being ready, being early. Vando was early, the baseline was loaded, somebody was at the elbow, and just causes havoc. Here we're going to talk more about their rotational though. So they did a good job, you can see here, at scramming off the ball and making sure that there was somebody with size at the rim. Vando, Naz Reid, Cat, those guys were always in position to help, or if the low man had the size and ability to be that guy. They did a great job here at getting Naz Reid scrammed off to be the low man and block the shot eventually. But these last two clips put it all together. First, it starts with ball pressure. Then you can see that they do a great job at being early and help. They rotate for each other, and they have the ability to scram and switch on and off of the ball. Here against Miami, you can see a lot of their values and principles being put into use in game situations. Ball pressure is first and foremost in all possessions for their defense. It eventually leads to a great snapshot of them loading the box and forcing a tough jump shot by Tyler Hero. So let's talk about their ball screen coverage. They really like applying pressure here too. Their primary covers were flat, soft blitz, and then they started dropping later in the year, as you can see here with Cat doing a flat coverage against Ja Morant in the playoffs. But the main thing I want to talk about is the backside of this pick and roll defense. You can see they do a great job of being early, flattening out, and protecting the paint. You got three guys basically in the vicinity of the box, making things very difficult to attack the paint. Here's another great example. Ja Morant comes off the screen, it's a drop. You got Pat Bev at the elbow, you got D'Lo on the box, and Jaden McDaniels on the other box. They do a great job at just being active, preventing easy paint touches, and then they do a great job at rotating out after being early. Guys really are committed to protecting the paint. The low man does an awesome job at flying in 9 out of 10 times. This ability to also switch off the ball will come into play also. But I really love this backside of the pick and roll defense for Minnesota. Here's a great example of that switching I brought up though. Jaden McDaniels stays in the corner. D'Lo switches with him in the paint and forces the turnover. Here's another great one on the recovery and X out. You can see the top guy X's out with the low man and gets out there for the contest at 3. And then we're going to have a couple more clips of this same ability to rotate off the ball. Low man plugs, high guy zones up, X's out, and they get a contest on the 3 against the Suns. And one clip here against Dallas. It's that same thing. Luka comes off, they get 2 on the ball, they flatten out on the backside. Low man picks up, they're zoning up behind him, and they're able to X out still off of the plug. Now here against Denver, you'll see the ball screen. They do a good job of being early, even on an empty side. You can see Taurean Prince is plugging the paint, and it results in a tough floater. Here against Memphis, you see the side ball screen. Ant was early. He was at the rim before the screen was even set, and it resulted in a blocked 2-point opportunity for Ja. To me, Minnesota's ball screen defense was one of the more fun and creative in the league, at first applying pressure, secondly being early and active on the help side, and lastly getting out and rotating out to shooters. Now it's time to go to the other end of the floor and talk about their offense. First, we have some stats for you. Their pace was the best in the NBA, but they had an offensive rating of 113.8, which was 7th. They shot around middle of the pack, basically in all categories. They had a high turnover percentage, and they were one of the worst turnover teams in the league. They have a lot of things to tweak offensively, but let's dive in the film and see what they can do. So first, let's talk about their transition play. So they were not the best transition team, but they did play at the best pace. They really make an effort at pushing the ball, whether it's a make or miss or whatever the situation may call for. In terms of how they ran the break, they ran 5 wide. They really did a great job at spacing the floor and attacking. The big trailed late usually, unless if the big was early. Vando did a really good job of getting out early and being active as a rim runner, which I think Gobert could easily fill that role. But as an offense in this early first 8 seconds, they really look to throw it ahead, play wide, play in space, attack gaps, which was successful for them with their personnel, and I think it could be more successful next year with the more skill just straight up across the board. They have 5 guys on the floor basically at all times that can put it on the ground and push. Next year with Gobert it'll be 4, but just the skill that they have. Everyone could technically make a play with the ball in their hands on the break, and Gobert's going to just be a great rim runner for them that we talked about earlier in this video. But for them, their pace and ability to play with that rim run is going to be essential next year. Play with the trail, play with the rim run. Gobert is a rim runner. Cat is a trail. You are going to have so much skill and talent at the 5 position that if you hit them as a trail or even as a short rim run, there are so many options to get into a secondary offense with that I think could be huge for them next season and could be a real staple for them at preventing turnovers and moving more without the ball. So now let's go to the half court and talk about their ball screen offense. To begin, they have a ton of guys that can make plays with the ball in their hands across their roster, giving them an ability to be great. Let's dive into the tactics though. So they really liked in this middle third pick and roll to have a single man strong side and 2 guys weak. That 2-man side was huge for them in terms of actions, movement, cutting off the 45 pins, flares, splits just off the ball, but also this spacing allowed for the ability to attack either direction, play off of flip screens, just have variety at the point of attack, which made it tough to guard. And also it made it tough to tag a roll, tag a pop, be active off of a shooter on the strong side. They were really disciplined in their spacing, knowing when and where to be, and this allowed them to be successful, attack gaps, and make plays. But now let's talk about their side pick and roll tactically. They really liked this 2-man action to flow into with 3 guys on the weak side, whether that meant 3-man space with 3 wide or a triangle space with a non-shooter on the porch. This third guy technically wasn't always on the porch, but he floated around on the weak side, being low, being at the high post, playing off of that 2-man action, and also being a screener. The 3-man side also presented the opportunity to cut, to play, just to make movement and cause havoc on the help side. This side ball screen exemplifies what I meant by the 2-man actions. They really like getting their guys in space to make plays and attack. But next season, I'm very excited to see this 3-man side with Cat at the top or at the 45 making plays off of Gobert at the dive. It's going to be really fun to watch all these talented, skilled guys in a side pick and roll. But now let me brainstorm a little bit and present an idea. I think Cat is a ball handler in the pick and roll with Rudy Gobert, or an inverted ball screen with D'Lo or Ant or Kyle Anderson or Jalen Noel, whoever you want to plug in as that screener, I think can be phenomenal. I think another year of development, another year where Cat could get better, will just promote his ability to make plays with the ball in his hands. I am extremely excited to see if Coach Finch puts Cat in a pick and roll with Gobert as the screener. That against some teams could be a huge mismatch. Some teams don't even have one big man to match up with, yet alone having Gobert and Cat on the floor. This can be a way to prevent the spacing issues everybody's talking about, along with allowing Cat to play with the ball in his hands, make plays on the perimeter, make plays downhill, show that he can pass it a little bit. I think Cat is one of the most skilled players in the association, and this with Gobert will allow him to display his skill across the floor next season. So now let's talk about their post offense. Last season, in the regular season, they were 24th in terms of points per possessions in post-ups. I think that just shows their room for improvement in this area. So to start, everything started with Karl Anthony Towns. Yes, they added Rudy Gobert, who can get a lot of these touches and show his ability to really work down here. But let's talk about Cat. Cat is a phenomenally skilled, high-level player, and he can dominate on the interior. Yes, he is skilled from the perimeter, able to put it on the ground, shoot threes, and make plays outside, but inside it could be so easy for him. He has the ability to finish with either hand, be skilled, be physical, finish with authority through the defense. He was a huge part of their success last year, and I think him as a promoted role in post-ups could be huge. But the thing that really made him special was his ability to pass, and this was their spacing. From a technical standpoint, they really liked 3 wide and the porch loaded. The porch or that floater was typically the non-shooter on the floor. They put him at the 45, they'd cut him, they'd make him the movement guy off of the ball in post-up situations, and they just played wide. The movement in post-ups, I think, needs to improve. I think I'd love to see some action off of Cat, off of Gobert. These guys could be really, really good in terms of playmaking off the post. Like, if Gobert has a touch and there's a split at the top of the key and he comes up for a grenade attack, like, there's so many options, and Coach Finch is such a high-level mind at the offensive end of the floor that I'm excited to see what he comes up with. One thing he did last year that I really liked was that porch activity, getting low behind the basket, cutting from the baseline. Those types of things were really successful, and I'm excited to see them continue to develop next year with Cat, Towns, and Naz Reid as post threats. But the inverted offensive potential that this unit has, they have guys on their roster that are big, skilled for their position. Ant is pretty big for his position. Kyle Anderson's basically a big point guard. Jalen Noel is physical. D'Angelo Russell showed the ability to post up mismatches. All these guys are high-level skilled players that I talked about in transition, making them successful. But if you put them in the post, I think that they can capitalize as passers and scorers, and the action and variability. That could be an option for Gobert, not to take up space and make things difficult, but create space. It's going to be hard to leave him as a vertical threat, and it'll give Cat an opportunity to play off the ball, play in space, attack downhill, and show his skill at all levels of the game. So to wrap things up, the Minnesota Timberwolves are one of the more interesting, fun, unique teams in the NBA. They can definitely be one of the best teams in the West with some tweaks here and there, but the bones and structure of this organization are there under Coach Finch, and I'm really excited to see Gobert's fit along Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, D'Angelo Russell, along with other free agent acquisitions. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, learned something about the Minnesota Timberwolves as we enter the new season. For more content like this, please like, subscribe, and share, and we'll catch you in the next one.